On this beautiful Wednesday. Hope you're all doing well. And we're going to get started. I realize we let you in a couple of minutes late. My apologies. We always like to start on time here at Can Do Webinar Wednesdays. Welcome. My name is Michelle. I am joining from Wisconsin, Edmonton, Treaty 6. And you can definitely feel the chill in the air. That new season, that winter season, I think is on its way. So I hope wherever you're joining from, you're experiencing creator's goodness. And let us know in the chat box as well, where you're joining from. We love to hear where our family is joining from across Turtle Island. So it is my pleasure and honor to introduce today's guest speaker. We have the lovely Sarah-Jerome with us. She is a First Nations Micmac woman from a community in Quebec. She's going to let us know the name of her community. I normally, like to take a try to pronounce the community she's from, but we're going to leave that into her hands today. She has studied forestry at the University of New Brunswick for 3 years, continued her education at the Vancouver Island University, and graduated with a Professional Indigenous Lands Management. So she currently works for her nations, and she's been there for the past 3 years as a lands officer. So I think we are in really good hands this afternoon. She's going to bring her knowledge to the table. This opportunity on Wednesdays is to be able to come together as this virtual family, this virtual community, to take in the knowledge that's being shared with us. There's so much goodness in our Indigenous peoples, communities, organizations. And so this is just a beautiful opportunity where we get to take in the knowledge that is being shared with us, that it may help us to build our own capacity wherever we are. It may help us, it may inspire us to do better at the work that we're doing. And so I think that this journey of learning together is really, really important. And the topic of her presentation today is basics of land use planning. So she's going to cover community-based environmental management surveys, how it relates to economic development, utilization of band land, and traditional lands, all good things. So again, all of you, we are honored that you have joined us this afternoon. Come with an open mind, open heart, bring those questions. There will be opportunity at the end for questions, but for sure, feel free to use that chat box along the way. I will definitely make note of any questions, comments that you might have, and we'll bring them to the table at the end for any discussion and any questions. I always think it's important to take a moment to acknowledge Creator, that we're part of Creator's world. And so I hope that you can just take a moment to extend gratitude for the goodness that's going on in your life, in your part of Canada today. So just extend that gratitude. We give thanks for all of the goodness starting today when that sun rose in the east. So thank you, Creator. All right, Sarah, thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us. So I'm passing this virtual mic off to you. Thank you. You're going to have to unmute yourself.
Thank you for that. It was a very lovely introduction. So this webinar Wednesday, I will be covering the basics of land use planning, and I'm hoping to share with you the knowledge and tools that I've gathered in the past couple of years of just kind of navigating my way through land management here from Gesgapegiag. That's my First Nation community. And so we can get started. So today's topic is the basics of land use planning. A little about myself. I'm Sarah-Jerome. Yes, I did study at the University of Fredericton for 3 years for forestry. I worked in that field as a technician for 4 years. Economic development was looking for a lands coordinator, so I did apply for that. And ever since then, I really found the love of the lands and my passion right here. So this is where I'm at. I am also an intern for membership and estates. Membership and estates do go with lands. So kind of bringing the 3 things together in harmony is really nice. And if you guys would like, you can leave a comment below if you're comfortable sharing who you are, where you're from, and what made you interested in land use and land management. So the agenda for today will be covering what is land use planning, where it can be applied, how it affects economic opportunity, environmental management and surveys, banned land and traditional lands. So what is land use planning? It's a living document that lives in the community and it plans out the community for the next 10 to 25 years. This is very community driven, so the community has a lot of involvement when creating this process. First Nations use land use planning, and it's become an important tool, especially to watch over their traditional territories. It's become a process to aim to capture their own development and their own inspirations that they want to bring in the community. Gesgapegiag is currently working on their draft plan for their land use plan, so we're in our final draft plan. Other communities like to use community comprehensive plans and other strategic plans that come within the community. So your economic development strategic plans, your band strategic plans, your any other kind of institution that you have on your reserve, their strategic plans can align with this, and just kind of having them involved and reading them over can really help a land use plan. So where it can be applied, so it started when economic development strategic plan aimed to have a structure approach and some guidelines. Chief and council wanted to determine optional location for every project, ensure that scarce lands, in particular community sites, are not compromised by any economic development projects. It also allows the community to have a global territorial outlook of the current sites, facilities, and future economic development projects to be built on the reserve while maximizing the revenues and minimizing potential issues. How an LUP will create economic opportunities. Having a proper land use plan in place confirms the availability of land to influence entrepreneurs to happen on reserve. So instead of having these businesses go elsewhere to look for open spaces in little areas, we want to keep our entrepreneurs on the reserve, and in the reserve kind of close to the heart of the community, a lot of where our commercial activities are happening. So we like to either have it right in the heart of the community, or we have it alongside the highways. And identifying and inviting other departments and participant officers and directors to kind of see what their future plans are. So where they want to build, so we're not overlapping anything when we're doing our planning. And identifying key members, so knowledge holders and stakeholders, partnering up with them you can have a more of a view of what everybody wants, what are our stakeholders in the community that do have a big influence on these things. So in our community, our economic development growth, we had rapid increase of tourism. So we have, just looking at my screen, we have here on the top corner, we have relay the cash. So this is located away from our community, but it is a way that we can still produce our economic development off reserve and still bringing revenue within the community. Our tourism increased. We have rustic camping. So in the corner at the bottom, where our teepees lie, we have rustic camping that just started up. And we will be doing paddle boarding and canoe rentals there. So that was a big, big hike for our reserve that we got. We also have chalets. So we do have those, and those are located off the reserve, but right adjacent to our community. So this does really bring the attraction of other off-reserve members coming within our community. So that kind of welcoming and showing them that, you know, we all want to work as one. We do have a lobster wholesale, so we do produce and sell our own lobster here. And we have a gas station also. So this all really just recently happened within a couple years when our economic development really aimed to have plans and to have a strategic line. So a lot of things did come out recently just of having these plans in place. And gave a lot more opportunity for our entrepreneurs to also think of, even if it's not on reserve, how we can still attract people to come within and to put our like kind of put our plans on the table aligned with other municipalities too. So for environmental management and surveys, in order to determine how we impact the environment, we need to understand the type of environment we are currently living in. So this is just kind of site visiting. It's basic site visiting. You go to these lands that we're talking about, you actually go to the sites. There's only so much we can actually say at a round table, I believe. It's actually when you're getting out on the site, seeing what you're dealing with, seeing the obstacles, you can really understand what kind of environment that you want to manage. So when thinking of an EM and environmental management, when you want to look at the past, you look at environmental assessment. So kind of what happened before in the lands, what kind of activity was happening there. You go for environmental assessment. They can kind of tell you what kind of activities that happened in the past there. Your current activity, you want to do an environmental audit. So investigate the activities, go out, do the site visit, see what's actually really happening on the lands now, take note of that, collect your data, take photos, aerial views, just so you can see the changes that are happening as they're going. And this way, this is recording for the future and future activities. You do environmental impact assessment. So that's seeing what your structures are now and what kind of damage they can do later on for having those there, whether it's minimal or very impactful. So just having to think of those things really can help you get a good start of understanding what you really want to manage, where you really want to go. For legislations for federal, so when you are on when you are on reserve land, it is federal land. So you do have to have a certified legal surveyor. These are recommended before buying or subdividing, improving, or building on land. So having surveys in place before you start developing is really, really, really important. I really do like to stress this a lot because it can just eliminate a lot of things for down the road. Unsurveyed land causes a lot of problems down the road sometimes, especially with the states also. Yeah. So a lot's going on, a lot's being said. We're kind of doing the homework, what's going on with the land, doing this, doing that. But now it's how to engage the community. You want the community's input really, really bad. You want to know what's being said. You want to know where things are going, and the community wants to know. So having community engagement is very important. The things that I like to do was elders lunches. So sitting down with the elders, talking, just eating a little bit. Food is like very soulful. It gets you comfortable and happy, so people want to open up. So I think elders lunch was really great. We did student mapping. So I would kind of bring maps and ask the kids, like, where do you see future parks? Where do you think the heart of the community is? And ask them really of what they see. And that way it paints a whole different picture from adults going to kids. It really did. Online surveys, that's how I reached out to off reserve members, post-secondary students, was online surveys, sending them what you doing, what you studying, do you think plan on coming back, like stuff like that. Pop-up booths, so anywheres I could go. It was like career fair, wellness fair, anything. I was kind of there with my maps, kind of like, what do you guys see, what do you guys how do you picture the reserve? What does it mean to you? Just simple questions to get the conversation going and making them comfortable. On and off reserve community member mail outs, so information sheets, just to let people know off reserve, hey, this is what we're doing in the community, come check it out, we're having some community engagements, these dates will be available if you want to pop by. So yeah, really informing off reserve members was super important for me. Post-secondary students, like I said, I did online surveys with them, and speaking the head of families. And I think that really works in a community. Some people don't all want to go to a community engagement. So having that one person in the family that you know will relay the message, having that is really, really important, I think. So that way, if they have any issues or if they have any concerns, they can voice it through them. And if they're not comfortable, then somebody else through the family will come. So I really think that was important for the community engagement. With all this, there is steps to consider. So for researching history, I was thinking of adding in a timeline when buildings were built, if any land claims were to record, any historical sites that need to be protected that I don't know about, that I learned about through these elders lunches, that they were telling me, in the past, this was there or that was there. And those are sites that we don't want to tarnish or anything like that. So I think research the history of your community or wherever you're planning on plans. I think research is a really, really good one. Having a task force. I had a task force, a lands team to help me make decisions. I had my housing director in there, my public works director, an elder, two youth, two community members, and an economic development officer. So I think these people were very important to have on the table, to understand the housing needs, to understand where public works is building right now, any infrastructure that's going up, especially have an elder on the table when decisions cannot be made. It's really nice to look at an elder and be like, okay, from your experience and stuff, taking that in consideration. Community members, it's really important. I can't stress that enough. Community members just having on board, hearing their input, that's really great. And economic development officers, they're there to speak for their entrepreneurs where they see that they want to build, whether it's a big commercial building like a strip mall or it's in home private business. Overlapping zones, so this is where surveying comes in. When developing new areas of interest, it's important to contact your local surveyor when looking over past plans. You can see any overlapping. You can tell when potential issues will be arising, and then you can make phases and steps, to how you are going to either subdivide or do a new survey. What's put away for commercial, what's put away for institutional. So I think that is very important. And taking consideration, I'm not sure if every reserve uses this term, but we use certificate of possession. So this for private landowners, very important to keep in consideration where your private land is, so you can, keep your barrier, a buffer zone when building, or just inform them, be like, hey, this is going on. So just having that nice relation, I think, is important. So the outcomes of land use planning, reflection of culture and history and how we use the land, support and enhance economic development opportunities, maintain existing houses, industrial and resources use, restrict development in natural hazard areas. So I think that is really important, finding then your environmental assessment will tell you that right away, places where you shouldn't be building, any wetlands that need to be protected, balancing tourism and recreational use. So sometimes those conflict each other. Sometimes there's too many tourists coming in sometimes, and we don't have a safe place for our like children to go use the basketball court or stuff like that. So just locations always in consideration. Protect environmentally vulnerable areas, so wetlands, protecting culturally sensitive areas. So a lot of traditional or sacred areas, like cemeteries and stuff, are very, very sensitive areas. We like to stress that to any environmental or any contractors that we hire. We make sure right away that they know where our cultural sensitive areas are. And then when all your planning is done, you want to monitor and keep evaluating. So you want to monitor your achievements. You want to see if you're following your goals. You want to see if you're actually hitting it and saying, okay, this is working. And then your challenges you face, okay, that's not working. How can we go about this differently? We tried it 4 different times the same way. Let's find something else, but document those challenges so you can see later on when you bring up other plans that, okay, we didn't like that route, so let's not do that. And lessons learned, the partners involved. So you definitely want to keep that relationship with your partners, your contractors, your knowledge keepers. You really want to have that partner relationship. And intentions for the future. So yes, you have plans, but plans always change and plans always grow. So I think having that just a little area for, the future of your growth, what you do want to do, and keep that on the side. So thank you everyone for that. I'm not sure if I talked too fast through that, but I am very open for questions, and hopefully I can answer you. And if I can't, I will maybe try to get back.
Sarah, that was so good. Proud of you. But also just you gave us kind of an insight. Like as you were talking, I was imagining your community and just like seeing it, and just it was a beautiful presentation. You gave us really good insight of what is possible. I think there were some pieces in there that I really think are important and integral. The communication and the relationship building and having the conversations with the elders, but also taking it to the young people as well. That's important. Their voices are so important because we're really creating that or you're really creating it for that generation. So wow, really good. So in the chat box, if we want to take a moment and draw our attention there, Patricia had left a link, I believe, Indigenous Tourism Fund Micro and Small Business Stream to help Indigenous tourism. And so then her question is, what streams of funding do you access for surveys, assessments, etc.? So posting that question to you.
So right now, our survey funding, it does come from the LEDSP. Yeah, so it does come from there. So our surveys do come from ISK. And get a hold of your ISK representative for your community. That is super, super important. Reach out to them right away. Tell them that and if you make that relationship with them and keep that network going. I have a very good relationship with my lands ISK person, and they're just wonderful. We send each other emails, just checking up, follow-up questions. So don't be nervous to ask them if there's any funding for surveys. Sometimes there's not, but there's other streams that you can with projects that you want to build, saying, okay, there's a problem here, we need a survey, and they could try to find something like that for that. Yeah.
Awesome. Just take note in the chat box. Amazing work, Sarah. Great job, Sarah. Loved all the community engagement points. Jonathan says this was so interesting. I didn't know about all of this work behind the scenes, which is, yeah, that's important. That's important work. And then Daniel enjoyed the details about the environment survey details. So we're going to open up the floor. If anyone has any questions, we welcome you to unmute yourself. Come on in. We'd love to hear from you. Or any comments you might want to lend to our gal Sarah today.
I actually have a question. I imagine that a land use plan is something that takes a lot of time to put together. I guess probably varies between communities as well, but what was your experience with that? How many months or years did it take to put your land use plan together?
That is a very good question, because it does take a long time. Like all these engagements, talking to these different people, getting a hold of your stakeholders, talking to each department, it does take a lot. So it takes about 2 to 3 years. That's what it took us. It could be shorter in some other communities, depending on the population also. Excuse me. So yeah, it does take a quite a bit, and I aim for about 2 to 3 years to have a good solid land use plan and yeah.
Thank you so much for that question. All right, so I saw Patricia. I don't know if that was your way of I'm ready to bring the questions. I saw she came online, came off camera. So Patricia, any questions?
I did have a question. So not every First Nation has a land technician person or a dedicated land manager. And so you spoke a little bit about some of the other alternatives. And so out here in Saskatchewan, we've got the Red Circle group of community navigators. And so I know that a lot of the community navigators were funded, and this was something that they were tasked with. It was their community land use planning. The challenge, though, of course, is that funding always ends up running out. And then sometimes when we're trying to access certain funding, like so through Indigenous forestry initiatives or other grants, you have to have your land use in place. And have you bumped into any challenges like that?
On the funding per se, no, we did not receive any challenges. Excuse me. But we do have a capacity issue. Right, we only had 2 people in the lands team here, and our recent employer just resigned, so now we're down to 1. But holding all these tasks and stuff is really hard. But contracting out, I think, is the best when you don't have much capacity. Yeah, I think contracting them out, but it's also, again, finding the funding. And if you do have an ISK representative, reach out to them and ask them if there's any funding available. Also, I know I just had it on my desk. Climate change does have a funding that just came out, and they help with land stuff too.
Thank you. And you noted a lot of your tourism through COVID, that we found a lot of nations and especially tourism industries were struggling. And that's why ITAC's got such a huge amount of support coming through. Did you guys have any problems with your tourism? Is it pretty self-sustaining? Is it all own source revenue, or how does it work?
I couldn't answer that question. I think that would be more for our tourism manager. We do have our own tourism manager, yes. So he kind of does that, and I live on the Gaspé, so I think we didn't have any tourism issue because I think someone went on the news and said, go to the Gaspé during the pandemic, and everybody came here. So we had a rapid increase. Yep.
Great presentation. I love the design and it was very thorough. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your questions.
Wow, that's quite the compliment coming from Patricia Crow. Thanks, Patricia. In the chat box, we have a question from Tyrone. Does this planning consider or account for any political considerations about title or overlap or treaty?
That's a good question. That is a good question. We do try to take in consideration of any overlapping. We are not under any of the treaties, so it's not like Treaty 1 or 2 or 3. We're just under a peace and friendship treaty. So not that I know of.
Okay, the next question is from Ken. So any analysis of threats like wildfires, floods, invasive plants, species, etc.?
We do have an MMS team, so they're the Micmac Maui Secretariat. So they watch over our 3 communities in the Gaspé, so Listugush, Gaspé, and Gesgapegiag. So they usually will tell us if we have any wildfire, floods, species at risk to look out for. When I reached out to them, they told us that we were fine with what we had. So I think we were okay. What did put on our radar, a lot of First Nations are built next to water, so we do consider the flooding zone. So we're really unconscious for that. Yeah.
Is there more information, Sarah, on your certificate of possession? The reason I ask about that is we've got one particular nation here in Saskatchewan where a business is located outside reserve boundary, but they're digging into reserve land to gather oil and other resources off reserve lands. Have you guys bumped into any situations with that in terms of?
We haven't dealt with that. We did have, we're very, no, nothing with under drilling on the sides. We have not dealt with any of that, no, because yeah.
But have you, in terms of the certificate of possession, you mentioned that's, can you explain that a little bit more detailed? So that's individuals that are using reserved land for.
So a certificate of possession is kind of like you paid off your house, you now got your land surveyed, you paid for your survey, and then they give you a piece of paper saying this is your private lot now. You paid off your house, you own the land, you own everything. And we cannot go into we call it CP land, so we do not go in there, we cannot touch it, it's private land, it's all considered to the people. So we are very cautious for that when we are building or stuff like that. So that's what our certificate of possession is. It would just kind of be a paper saying this is yours now, like you can take care of it, this is your land. Yeah.
You talked a little bit about sacred lands, traditional lands, and so we found in our territory, we're in Treaty 4, so we have a sacred site, like an actual sacred circle, traditional lands that were with the teepee rings and Some people call it a medicine wheel. And so we're struggling because no nation has really taken ownership of it. And so that particular land was bought by a construction company and then rented out to Hutterites that use that land for cattle. And so it's getting destroyed. And so it's been documented by our archaeological, like the province is supposed to protect it. And so it's just some of those challenges, it's just like, so we're looking for First Nations that want to take ownership of it, but they want the nation to buy the land back from the construction company and of course, protect it on their own. But I'm always curious to see, if other nations or other territories run into these concerns or issues and any paths of solutions or, how to address some of those things.
Yeah, that is a good question. And I've only, to be honest with you, only been here for so many years. From the past of what I've known, we did not enter anything like that. We do have a site that we use. So kind of like, I kind of understand what you're talking about. So we have where our teepees are. That's our powwow ground. So it's where we like to do our ceremonies. We like to dance. We love the music. So that site is not considered banned land. So it's owned by the municipality beside us. We do put our teepees there. We do our celebrations. We do everything there. We practice our culture, but we have good relations with them. And I bring them on the table and I talk with them. I try to network, and that's why I stress that so much is network, keep your relations, because you will need them. And when it came time that they were like, you guys' teepees are too close to the water, you have to move them. Well, I call up the municipality. We sit down on a table. We share coffee. We talk, and we try to resolve things. So that's just of what kind of a little similar situation. Not so much, but yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And again, you speak to the importance of having strong relations with the people, with the community, with all of the generations, but then the neighboring communities as well, and the collaboration. So that is really a key takeaway, in my opinion, is just to continue to develop those relationships, have coffee with the folks and some bannock and jam with the folks, right? So really good takeaway there. All right, Brianna, in the chat box, when you started your land use planning journey, did you reach out to other communities for collaboration opportunities? I find that the sharing of information is very important, so communities are not reinventing the wheel. So she's talking about her community of Westbank First Nations that does a lot of information sharing and presentations to other communities who are interested in learning how WFN went about things in relation to land use planning. Really good, Brianna. Thanks for offering that question and that information.
Yes, I love that. So that I did not touch on, and I so should have. That is best practice. That's when you go to other communities that already done what you want to do. You go reach out to them. I've done it with I take the population, I take the hectares of the land that I'm in, and I compare it to other communities, and I go see them and I reach out. I say, listen, we have similar interests, we have similar economic development. What are you doing? How'd you do it? Like, sit down with them. And that's what I basically did. I went to member 2 and I said, listen, what's your land use planning? How'd you go about it? This and that. I stayed for a couple of days. They showed me their centers. We sold a couple baskets, but that was really, I really like that point. Yes, definitely do that for the best practice. Reach out to communities that are doing what you've that are already done. Don't reinvent the wheel. Tweak it here and there, but really, I think that is really good point. I really do like that, and collaborating and sharing ideas, because sometimes it's not just about land use planning and it's about something else. So I think sharing that. Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
All right. So anybody have any questions before we close our session? Last call. Patricia would like a copy of the presentation. You're making this available to the participants who joined today?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. It was beautiful. Well done. Really good. Awesome. Yeah, so you all who registered, you're here, will get a copy of today's PowerPoint presentation. Well, thank you so, oh, here we are, Lisa, come on in.
Hi, I feel bad because I had to step out for a few minutes, so I have no idea if you discussed this. So if you did, my apologies. But I'm with the Kiskinik First Nation, and we have I'd say about 7 kilometers of land that runs adjacent to Lake Windermere. And I was wondering if you discussed anything about the high water mark, because we have a campground that we have 54 short-term renters that stay there over the summer, and they have started putting they put a dock down at the water, and they started kind of basically encroaching in the water, and there is there's no right or wrong answer that we've found when we've been working with our regional district as to whether what our water rights are. Like we're told that it's, you know, right up to the high water mark. I was just wondering if anybody, if you, Sarah, or anybody on the call has had any experience with that, because I did have a conversation with the Soyuz Indian band, and their stance is that that's our land. We want to take that stance, but we're a little just hesitant.
We did not run into any issues like that, but our sistering community has, and what they started doing was a land guardian programship, and they started doing partnering up with the DFO, and they started looking at the Fisheries Act, and they kind of are training their land guardians to be kind of like a DFO now. So instead of on the land, they're in the water, and that's where your water protection. And you're doing beautiful work. I really, really like that. You know, you see the water, you in your gut, you know, you're like, this needs to be protected. There's something there. So go with that gut feeling. But you know, maybe looking to a lands guardianship program or calling the DFO and the Fisheries Act with something.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we did just hire a guardian within the last few weeks. I'm in economic development. I'm not in land, so they maybe they're starting to work with that, and I don't know yet, which is hopefully exciting. But yeah, that's our next move. So thank you.
Oh, congrats on the land guardian. That's awesome.
All right, well, thanks for bringing that question in, Lisa. So any more other questions, comments? We really honor that you all had showed up today. So thank you so much for being here. And it was a good conversation. Sarah, again, hats off to you. You're doing some really good, important work in your community. So we continue to cheer you on. Keep doing what you're doing. And keep inspiring folks like us. Tell the story. I think that that's really important as well, to show what is possible. So thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. And the rest of you, we hope you have a good rest of the Wednesday, rest of this day that Creator has given to us. And we'll see you next time. So be well.